a whole suite of things that are going to be really, really good for our economy. It is a large deficit, and I would say, though, it's money well spent. And I know the government keeps saying that it's not spending, it's investing. And when we look at the surface of the budget, we would, from the Chamber's perspective, agree. What this will do for confidence in the economy, it will do wonders. We're starting to see investment pick up in the private sector, and this budget will do that.
You go, home builders just hate this budget. How come?
We need to double housing starts in this country, and the 4,000 units proposed to be developed under Build Canada Homes is less than 1% of what's going to be required. So the 95% of Canadians who are in market attainable housing or who wish to be in market attainable housing aren't seeing a lot of relief from this budget.
Nothing really on rentals. There's really little in the budget that spoke to the troubles that we're seeing downtown, right? Urban wellness, post-recovery perspective on housing, whether that's day shelters, whether that's transitional housing, whether there's wraparound mental health and addictions.
Cliff says, this is a conservative budget wrapped in red foil. Many of my staunch liberal friends are unhappy with it.
When everyone feels like they're capitulating a little bit, that's probably a good thing. And obviously there's going to be room for improvement on all different lenses. But I think one of the things that's really important to remember is that when we have a strong economy, we can do so much more.
He apologized for what they did with the commercial, because it was a false commercial.
I did apologize to the president. The president was offended by the act, or by the ad rather, and it's not something I would have done.
And that's what President Trump wants. He wants a terrible deal for Canadians. I'd never apologize to Donald Trump. Donald Trump's trying to destroy our province, destroy our country, steal manufacturing jobs and auto sector jobs, steel jobs, aluminum jobs, the list keeps going on. I'll never apologize to President Trump, ever. They put me on a stretching rack, I wouldn't apologize.
Standing up for his own sectors, you're not going to hear Mark Carney say Donald Trump wants a, quote, terrible deal, and he's, quote, trying to destroy our country and steal our jobs. That's the luxury that a premier has. The prime minister is not in a position to do that.
If I'm Carney, I'm pissed off. Sure, go into an interview, say what you want about Trump. You've got a big economy there in Ontario, but the ad was a little too far, because I don't see what the win is with the ad. The ad, it seems like a shot in Trump's arm, and it doesn't make him reverse his opinion on anything. It doesn't make him reverse tariffs. It only ignites his anger. When he said, hey, I'm trying to get a deal done, I just don't see where the win was for Ford other than with his constituents.
But there you go.
But he can do that in interviews. He just gave his opinion, but the ad just seems like it's just going to ignite a fire. And if that's what he was trying to do, well, hey, yeah, you did it.
As much as liberal partisans will try and spin this as the opposition triggering an election, if we do actually get plunged into one, it honestly will be because the Carney government waited until the last minute to properly do its homework. And as a Tiger mom, I can't condone that. We know they only started consulting the opposition parties after interim NDP leader Don Davies called them out. But why did it take that long? October 21st is only 2 weeks before the budget date, right? For comparison, even before the supply and confidence agreement that the Trudeau Liberals would have had with the NDP under Jagmeet Singh, the government would spend several weeks consulting with the NDP and the Bloc to ensure that there were measures that they were going to support.
It's obvious to me why the Conservatives would want another election. They want another kick at the can. They want to believe that the election was an anomaly. An election, by the way, that cost Canadians $570 million. The NDP, 3 of their 7 MPs could support this budget. Half of their MPs could support this budget, and it could pass, and the government could live to see another day.
There are only 7 MPs. They don't have official party status. They are kind of broke as a party right now. So all of that points to why the heck would they even want to go to an election. But the flip side to that is they don't have official party status, and they only have 7 MPs. So what do they really have to lose? All they should really be doing, if I'm them, is to target 5 more seats, pour in resources, pour in a ton of volunteers into those 5 ridings, and try and win 5 more seats so that you get to 12 and all of a sudden you have official party status and you can start to be represented in Parliament a little bit better. I don't think that's a safe bet by any stretch, and there are a ton of reasons I could think of right now that where the NDP should in fact vote alongside the government and to ensure the passage of the budget. It was one thing when the NDP government would be seen as propping up what is arguably, a progressive liberal government under the Trudeau Liberals. I don't think you can really say the same thing with the Carney Liberals. They're much more to the right of center. He's already qualified this budget, the Prime Minister himself, as calling it an austerity budget. If you're the NDP, do you really want to be seen as propping up an austerity budget? Probably not.
This is a relay project. Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
I want to thank you for joining us in a very special edition of Real Talk on this Remembrance Day 2025, lest we forget. I'll jump right into our live chat powered by Park Power. Approved by Pete is watching our live stream right now on X and writes, because when the last poppy falls off at 11 a.m., the only thing left standing is your memory. And honestly, man, says Pete, that's scarier than any war we've forgotten. Wear that poppy so you don't forget. Pete setting the tone today. In just a moment, we'll introduce you to three individuals, three Canadians. You've heard them on this show before, passionate about honoring and preserving the memory of Canadian men and women who have served the armed forces, both at home and abroad. We'll look back at some of the world's most historic and most tragic conflicts, and we'll look ahead at the state of Canada's military and how Canadians are remembering. That in a moment. But first, we want to let you know that this episode of the show is happening with the presenting sponsorship of Hanson Distillery, and in particular, their support of the YWCA's Rose campaign through this limited edition whiskey. It's Whiskey Rose. This barrel, one barrel only, generously donated by our friends at Hanson Distillery to the cause. That means that 250 bottles and only 250 bottles have been produced, and you can get your hands on them like an incredible group of people did just a few days ago at the official launch at Hanson Distillery, 174th Street and 111th Avenue. For those of you in the Metro Edmonton region, it's right beside Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Once these 250 bottles are done, once they're sold, they're gone, and we will have raised $25,000 to help prevent violence against women, girls, and gender minorities. You can learn more about the Rose campaign by visiting ywcaofedmonton.org. And don't forget, you can always visit Hanson Distillery. Pop in, see the operation, and pick up a bottle or a case of Whiskey Rose while supplies last, in support of the YWCA's Rose campaign. On this November 11th, we welcome back to the Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton, Lieutenant Colonel retired Laurie Hawn, who joined the Royal Canadian Air Force at just 17 years of age, receiving his pilot wings at 19, going on to serve over 30 years, more than 7,000 hours on fighters and commanding a CF-18 squadron. As most Canadians will remember, Laurie got the political bug and defeated the Deputy Prime Minister, Anne McClellan, to take a seat in Parliament in 2006, serving 10 years for his country politically, more than 4 years as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defense, including 7 trips to see the troops in Afghanistan. Laurie is a champion today and moving forward of No Stone Left Alone, and a wonderful friend of the show. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for making time for us.
Great to see you. Thanks, Ryan.
You've brought your buddy Randall Purvis, who is one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Randall, a successful entrepreneur, is also the co-founder of No Stone Left Alone, a nationally recognized remembrance initiative that brings thousands of students into Canadian cemeteries and cemeteries around the world every year to honor veterans by placing poppies on their headstones. Randall's vision has helped bridge generations, turning remembrance into a living, participatory experience for young Canadians. It's nice to have you back, Randall.
Good morning, and thanks.
And I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show a good friend of mine. Don Levers is an acclaimed author and a military historian whose work has captured the stories of Canadian veterans with honesty and emotional clarity through books like Our Father's Footsteps and countless ongoing interviews. Don has preserved the lived experiences of those who served, ensuring that their voices aren't lost to time. Don, thanks for making time for us today.
Thanks for having me back. It's great to be here.
Well, I don't know if I've met 3 people more passionate, and I hope that it's a long list of consideration, but more people passionate about sharing the stories of Canadian veterans, and also, I think, inspiring Canadians to truly remember. Let me ask you out of the gates today, what does it mean to you on this November 11th, Don, to truly remember?
I guess for me, it's remembering that how lucky I am to be here because my dad survived his wounds when over 300 Canadians didn't make it off the beaches of Normandy, and throughout the war, and people that he met and talked about, and how many people have survived and what they're doing today, and that we're here because these guys survived.
You, for people that aren't familiar with your book, Our Father's Footsteps, talk to us, and obviously, I think honoring your father and probably seeking to learn more about some of the most perilous and life-threatening moments of his life must have inspired you. But why was this project so important to you to put out to the public?
I guess because we're losing those stories. We're losing the veterans. In the case of Our Father's Footsteps, I did stories based on their letters, journals, and telegrams, and their family history books. I'm now working on another book, and I've had the pleasure of being able to introduce and meet a 102-year-old Irish war bride who was a nurse in England and, was putting out fires and watching bombs fall all around her and watching dogfights in the air. And also about Jim Parks, one of the last surviving members of my dad's regiment. He turned 101, and he's just an incredible gentleman with incredible stories. So we're losing those stories, and because of that, I wanted to try and help people remember them. And for some people, they can't read the book because it's very emotional. They want to read it, but they can't, or they put it down because they get emotional about it. So, and I appreciate your comment about being passionate, because I think we all are passionate about the programs that we're working on.
Randall, people can check out their website, your website, No Stone Left Alone, and will soon realize the magnitude of the work that you've been doing, the reach of this work. For perspective for our audience, in 2025 alone, more than 200 different ceremonies across Canada and in 9 other countries around the world. For people that may not be familiar with the work of No Stone Left Alone, how did it come about, and why has it been so important to you?
Well, it's a story that is based on a promise. My beautiful wife was 12 years old, and sadly her mother was dying. So the last words she said to Maureen were, "Don't forget me on Armistice Day." So I met Maureen when she was 19, and we went over to the cemetery at Beachmount here in Edmonton, and we placed a poppy on her mother's headstone. Fast forward many years, we had our own children, and one of our beautiful daughters said, "Grandma, our mom, why don't all the soldiers have a poppy on the headstone?" So we met our friend Laurie Hawn in Ottawa. We one thing led to another. We talked to the 3rd Division. We said, well, let's just try this. On November the 10th, 2011, we placed 4,000 poppies in Beachmount Cemetery. And last year we placed 130,000 poppies in actually 297 locations across the world. And we'll do more than 200 this year. This year's a little bit complicated because of the teacher strike, but it's amazing the support we've been getting, and it's really important to our family personally, as I know it's really deeply important to my pretty wife, Maureen.
I know that many Real Talkers that would normally be listening or watching this show later in the day are going to be listening or watching live today. Because they're observing the stat. Their kids are home with them. Right. I know that our audience, the age of our audience today, will span different generations, and we'll loop in as many audience comments as we can through the episode. Tracy says, I absolutely love that No Stone Left Alone program. So meaningful for the kids. Tracy says, I saw that hundreds of kids participated this year in the Edmonton area alone. Others are saying, it says these kids will remember that experience forever. Ben is chiming in on our live chat today and says, good morning. He says, Remembrance Day is one of the most important days of the entire year, lest we forget. Laurie, you've served Canadians in the cockpit. You've served Canadians in the House. And this is something I know that has been very important and very personal to you, probably for obvious reasons, through the decades. Do you wake up on November 11th with something particular on your mind, something particular on your heart?
People, the people we left behind. We dwell a lot on the people in wartime, and that's vitally important because they're the folks that give us what we have today. But at peacetime, we lost a ton of folks too. Peacekeeping, quote unquote. We had 125,000 people serve in peacekeeping. 130 died in peacekeeping. On the aircrew side, during the Cold War, 47 to 91 or so, 932 aircrew lost their lives. 48 of those were friends of mine. So on November 11th or other days, that's what I think about. A couple were, closest friends. And everybody who's been there like I have has the same sort of recollections. Is what we did was amazingly fun. We had a great time doing it, but there were times when, you landed and crap, we lost somebody. He didn't come back. A good friend of mine is in the bottom of a fjord in Norway. We went through not pilot training, but 104 training together. Great young guy, single guy, and he died in a starfighter that went out of control and crashed into a fjord in Norway on May 1973. So I remember him for sure. And there's so many others, that are printed in your mind. You just can't forget them.
Well, and there's a new generation of Canadian veterans. There's a new generation of Canadians who understand tragically what it feels like to lose someone in service. We'll spend a lot of time today, and rightfully so, remembering Canadians that bravely served in the first two world wars as an example, but Canadians are serving today. Canadians served in Afghanistan. The meaning of the day has evolved.
I mean, I spent 7 visits to Afghanistan during that war, and I met some amazing people. We lost a couple of people while I was there. I was not out, with them in combat, but we were all fairly close in Kandahar and spent time outside the wire. I was there for 5 Christmases in a row, spending Christmas Day with the troops, serving turkey dinner, sometimes out in the boondocks of Afghanistan, where our closest neighbors were the Taliban. We didn't offer them any turkey.
Right.
But those are the kind of things that, in my parliamentary career, that kept me connected to the military, for sure, and the sacrifice.
We've got some comments already popping up in the live chat. People curious about the politics of all of this. A budget has just dropped, federally speaking. We'll want to ask you about that in a moment. Randall, Tracy's comment here about the kids, the participants in this No Stone Left Alone ceremony will remember this forever. Is there kind of a collective experience that you hear about? What are these young kids, many of them elementary school age, what do they tell you about what they've learned or what the experience is like for them?
Well, we don't want to overstate it, but many of them have never been to a cemetery. So we bring the children out of the school into the cemeteries all across the nation and in Europe. And when they get to the cemetery, we ask them to go to the headstone, say the name of the soldier, say thank you, and place a poppy at the base or on the top of the headstone. And then we ask them to write reflection letters. And the reflection letters tell us in very, very clear, they leave a very clear message that is a moving experience for them. Laurie said it well, too. We live in this great country called Canada, and we're here because of the service and sacrifice of all of these soldiers. But I always want to make a very clear point. Today we honor and respect the service and sacrifice of the soldiers that are serving today all across the world. I know several that have been deployed. I know people that are over in Latvia today that are serving our Canadians, and they're doing it on the world stage in very, very fine fashion. And I want to make sure that we not honor their remembrance, but we honor their service today and every day of the year, actually.
Mark is in our live chat, says mad respect for veterans, says let's remember what I stand on guard for thee means today. Mark says it's why my grandfather took a bullet in the lung in World War I, leaving his younger brother at Vimy Ridge. It's why my grandpa never slept through a night after that. Mark today is remembering Cecil Campbell and his brother John, who died at Vimy Ridge at the age of 17. Don, you've spent years documenting the stories of Canadian veterans, including your own dad. What common thread runs through the narratives? Maybe one that the average Canadian wouldn't even grasp.
Well, we were I took my daughter and granddaughter to Normandy in 2024 for the 80th anniversary. And being able to have 4 generations of our family walk across Juno beaches is pretty incredible. But we also visited the Benny-Semer Cemetery, where we found the headstones of, matter of fact, one of the men that was my dad mentioned in his letter. His name was Chartrand. And it turns out that he was a Métis soldier. And during our first interview that you and I had, somebody wrote in and asked if I was going to tell the story of the Cree Talkers. Well, I'm not telling the story of the Cree Talkers, but there was 5 men from a northern Manitoba village that I'll be talking about in the next book that were all killed within 2 days of landing on Normandy. 4 of them were captured and murdered by the Germans. And then I found the headstone over at another cemetery in France. that was the men that were killed later, and found a man that was killed beside my dad. So I honor them, and being able to find those headstones and pass those along is really important.
Les in our chat says, we're talking about kids. They were kids, and they gave everything. He says we ought not forget today's veterans. We have new veterans coming home, not the same as when they left. Les says, let us never forget the modern veteran. Says Afghanistan was a hell with smart weapons.
It was, and like I say, I was over there a few times, obviously not doing what they were doing, but amongst them, and back home here, have spent time with them as well, and they're exceptional people, and it's not just them, it's their families who pay the price for the rest of their lives. And there's some folks that are missing, obviously a lot of folks missing limbs and so on, but those things you can see. The other wounds you can't see. They're the wounds that are in their head and their heart. And that's what we need to remember today, too, is the families. The other half of the equation is the families that are left behind.
Tony follows up on that, says, our government has to do better in helping our veterans. No vet should be homeless or be suffering from mental illness without supports. It's sad, says Tony, that some of our vets are suffering. You're in a unique position, Laurie, having served as in Parliament, having served in the Air Force. How would you assess how Canada currently is providing supports or not for our veterans?
We can always do more. We do more in some areas than we have in the past, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. I think the number is about 1,500 just in Edmonton. There's 1,500 vets who are homeless, and that's just unacceptable. And the numbers nationwide are much, much larger than that. So there's a lot of initiatives right now about homes for heroes and veterans homes and things like that they're working away at it. But will we ever have no homeless veterans? Probably not. But we've got to do much better than we are. And there's a whole bunch of civilian organizations that are taking up that call to do that, to do programs like homes for veterans, or small houses and so on. And a lot of it is mental health related. It's not just physical wounds, it's mental wounds. And like I say, you can't see those, but they're there, and they affect those folks, more than, and I know some of them with physical wounds, missing limbs, but the biggest wound is in their head and their heart. And we need to take those folks under our wings, get them housed, get them fed, get them whatever supports they need. And we do a good job. When I say we, I mean Canada does a good job in some areas and a pretty poor job in others, and we've got to fix those things we can fix for sure.
Have you sensed a cultural evolution within the Canadian forces? Like I hear this oftentimes from firefighters who will say that the culture has changed in the fire hall. After a tough call, they'll now come back to the hall and they'll sit around the table, and for those who want to, they'll talk about it. That never used to be the case. Is it the same thing with the men and women who serve?
It is. I mean, in my own experience, we if we lost somebody, the first place we would go would be the bar. To raise a glass, to break a glass in the fireplace, and to tell war stories about whoever that individual was, and some of them might actually have been true. But no, it's a healing thing. Now, there's a good side to that, and that's the sense of cohesion you have. The bad side is that, the medication of choice was often alcohol, and that, in the long term, for some people, was more than they could handle or should handle. So there's those situations we have to deal with too. But the whole aspect of getting together and sharing that loss, sharing that experience, we need to do that every single day.
I was telling you guys I was up until the wee hours of the morning last night. I guess just kind of, I don't know. It felt like maybe I was entering a state of reverence or something. I guess I was just getting myself mentally prepared for this day and for this Real Talk Roundtable. If you're just joining our live stream presented by California Closets, we're talking to Lieutenant Colonel retired Laurie Hawn, Randall Purvis, Don Levers. And I was going back and forth. I watched a couple of episodes of Band of Brothers. You get kind of an American take on conflict in that era, and then watched Passchendaele, of course, shot in our beautiful home province of Alberta with Paul Gross. And his character is back home after serving his country. This is sort of how they set the scene for the whole movie, and he's recovering from injuries sustained on the battlefield, like you described them, Laurie. The physical injuries have healed, and he's dealing with what he describes as shell shock. Don, you've interviewed countless people in their 80s, their 90s, a 102-year-old war bride. How would you describe the evolution of their awareness and even our awareness of what many of them have been living with or did live with for decades.
One of the things that I'm finding, some people are really willing to talk about it. The memories that this 102-year-old war bride right here in Edmonton has, talked to her about it, and it left an indelible mark on her and was difficult after the first couple of times to talk about. She was having some restless nights, and so it brought back some bad memories, unfortunately. One of the things I hope to do, if I live long enough, would be to do, instead of our father's footsteps, would be our brother's footsteps, which are the men who have served in Afghanistan and Bosnia and in the Air Force, because their stories don't get told either. And if they're willing to share them. That's down the road a little bit, but I have talked to a couple of Afghanistan vets, and their stories are there too, and how lucky they were to survive. You've met those guys. You were there with them.
Absolutely. They're spectacular people, just ordinary folks doing extraordinary things. And that's what Canada has done throughout its history. Is, we've gone to war to help people we've never met and will never meet. And that's, I think, the mark of a truly great nation, truly great people. You're willing to lay down everything for somebody you don't know, but it's just the right thing to do.
And that's one of the things that impressed me most, and my daughter and granddaughter, of going to France, that even to this very day, how people appreciate and what we sacrificed and what we did for them. You've had the pictures of the young children at the cemeteries here, the young children that came out to the memorial for the 58 Canadians that were murdered, the people that came out on June the 6th, and the young people from the schools that come out and recognize what we did is just, it encouraged me further to write the book.
And it's international. My last visit to Juno Beach, we had about 100 or so French school children come out onto the beach with us and picking up sand. And I collected a whole bunch of sand from Juno Beach that I've given to people over the years. And we were there with 3 or 4 other parliamentarians, and we sang the La Marseillaise and O Canada on the beaches of Normandy on the 75th or 70th anniversary of D-Day. And it was just a really moving experience that these little kids are French. They don't know us, but they have a sense of what we meant, by we I mean Canada, what Canada meant to their
families. You did a better job of singing Les Marseillaise than I tried. I tried a couple of times and I didn't do very good at it, but it's resounding song.
I hummed the tune.
Laurie, the wonderful friend of this show, Chris Labossiere, has taken on a big role with the Juno Beach Center. People can check out junobeach.org to learn more about that. The Juno Beach Center is Canada's Second World War museum and cultural center located in Normandy, France. Pays homage to the 45,000 Canadians who lost their lives during the war, of which 5,500 were killed during the Battle of Normandy, 381 on D-Day. When you're talking about holding that sand in your hands, what an experience.
Well, this is the sand that people walked on,
yes,
fought on, and died on so many years ago. It's a moving experience. And just the little vials of sand, and I've kind of run out of them now, but I was giving people a little vial of sand from Juno Beach, on the anniversary to keep as a whatever keepsake. And it's just a tiny little symbol of what it means. We've fought and died on sandy beaches around the world for freedom, for people we've never met, but we're willing to do that for them because it was just the right thing to do.
More from these three on a special episode of Real Talk. We'll also be getting into the live chat to see what our audience members, our brothers and sisters in Canada and outside of Canada are reflecting on today, on this very important day. It happens to be a Tuesday today, and every Tuesday over the next number of months, we are recognizing the incredible contributions that have been made to society, the lives that have been transformed, in many cases saved, at the Royal Alexandra Hospital. 125 years at the Royal Alex, as it's known. These are the echoes of the Alex. Every hospital has stories, but the Royal Alexandra has echoes. Echoes that reach all the way back to a time when Edmonton was still a young prairie city staring into the chaos of the First World War. 1916, trains pulling into the old CNR station just a few blocks from the Alex weren't carrying settlers or supplies. In many cases, they were carrying silence. Young men from Alberta, shattered in body, hollow in spirit, returning from the war. They'd survived the trenches, but they hadn't escaped the war. And Edmonton, this little community on the North Saskatchewan River, suddenly became their lifeline. The Royal Alexandra Hospital stepped into a role that it was never really designed for, a de facto military and convalescent hospital, wards filled with soldiers missing limbs, rooms repurposed for long-term rehabilitation, orthopedic care, and what we would now refer to as trauma recovery. Nurses, many of them barely older than the men that they were treating, learned on the fly how to mend bones shattered by artillery and how to coax spirits broken by things that they would never be able to unsee. And the people of Edmonton responded. Church groups cooked meals, families volunteered, kids sent letters to soldiers they'd never met. The Alex became more than a hospital. It became a community promise that no one who returned from war would be left alone. That's the emotional thread that still runs through the Alex today. Suffering is never something you face by yourself. Healing is communal. That a hospital is never just a building, it's a witness. So when we talk about the Royal Alexandra, we're not just talking about a modern medical campus. We're talking about a place that learned a century and a quarter ago, initially, through the First World War and other conflicts over 125 years, how to hold pain and how to help people find their way back from it. Those are the echoes of the Alex. And we're working with the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation to ensure that those echoes continue into the next 125 years. We're asking you to consider a donation today on this Remembrance Day at givetoroyalalex.org. Give for the future in honor of the past. You can visit givetoroyalalex.org, and we want to hear your family's echoes of the Alex. You can send us your story anytime to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Lieutenant Colonel retired Laurie Hawn, should be referring to you as a retired MP as well, right? Remind people of your service to your country. Randall Purvis, co-founder of No Stone Left Alone, and Don Levers, author of Our Father's Footsteps and other books, a World War II author and historian, joining us on this special episode of the show in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I love those echoes of the Alex stories, these young kids, as the stories go, writing letters to soldiers that they'd never met. I suppose what you're doing with No Stone Left Alone is almost a modern equivalent of that.
Exactly, and they said something in there. I was born in the Royal Alex a few years ago, quite a few years ago. Yeah, so I think No Stone Left Alone is exactly that. So we're taking today's children, and they're honoring the past and of service of our Canadian Armed Forces, and they're connecting. They're connecting in a different way, and we really, really think, and we know this to be true, that they're really appreciating the lives and service, lives we live in Canada. And I want to say something. In the current state of the world, we have a lot of people that are from other countries, and we should be extremely proud of the life they lead here, because I don't want to overstate this, but some countries, they don't trust the military, they don't trust the police. But in Canada, we should be proud that these children have a great access to education, and they have a chance to become whoever they want based on the service and sacrifice of the Canadian Armed Forces and the work they do and they are doing today, the work they've done and the work they're doing today.
Randall, talk about the letters we get from the students.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing. I remember one child years ago said, I hear about these soldiers going away for months and years away at a time, and then when I heard about it, they went to a no stone ceremony. She said, I couldn't wait to see my father get home. I stayed up, and I could hardly believe that how lucky I was that my father comes home every day, because a lot of these children, they never came home. So we have, I can't even remember the most important ones. We did a ceremony October the 6th in Krakow, Poland. And Krakow, Poland is very close to the Ukrainian border. So we did it in English, Polish, and Ukrainian. And when we were there the first time several years ago to do our ceremony, we asked the children, the Polish children, and what they did for us is they They couldn't speak the language of the Canadian, the English, so they drew pictures of Canadian Air Force, Laurie, and the Polish Air Force with bullets going down to tanks on the ground. So they appreciate the Canadian service in all in Europe today, just like they did 75 years ago.
You had the pleasure of meeting Marie Brown a couple of years ago when we did an interview, and she was a year and a half old when she met her dad for the first time, because he had gone over. He landed on D-Day and didn't meet him. And she was born on the 4th of November and didn't meet him till she was a year and a half old. So those same things, and she always appreciated that.
Alberta Rancher today, remembering their uncle, says 20 years ago today, my uncle, a World War II veteran, passed away during a Remembrance Day ceremony. Alberta Rancher says it was very fitting for a Canadian hero who was wounded on June 6th on Juno Beach. Matthew says, going off what Don said about men being murdered. By the way, Aaron says, I love how he used the word murdered. Says, yes. Matthew says, after being captured in Normandy, says this was part of the Normandy massacres. Around 150 Canadians were basically executed over a few days. Can you talk a bit about that for people that may not be aware?
After they landed, the Canadians made it into the first objective faster than anybody in the Allied forces. And on the 7th of June, the regiment my dad was with, the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, there they were holding a place around a town called Pouteux-en-Bassin. And they were overrun, and they ran out of ammunition, and they had and they were captured. And then they were taken to some of them were taken to a place called the Chateau d'Oydreau, and taken out to the garden after being talked to, and taken out in the garden and shot.
And that was in the Abbey?
No, this was the Chateau d'Oydreau, and then there was the Abbey d'Ardennes.
Yeah.
And then there was another bunch that were of Canadians that were killed at the side of the road because they didn't want to take them back and turn them into with the other Germans. And then there was some Canadians, including the Indigenous man on the cover of my book, was killed on the 12th of June when they were being taken back to be turned in as prisoners, but they were accidentally strafed by American planes because it would look like a German column. Yeah. So again, I wonder if I'm alive today because my dad was wounded on June 6th and was back in England by the time the next day when they were captured, and one of the men who helped escort the prisoners back to the beach with was amongst those that were murdered. So is that why I'm here?
So his life was saved by being shot.
Exactly, yes.
Let's take a second to.
We got to take the positive outlook
to think on that. You know, it's right. These stories that we're hearing, and it's so important to hear them, and it's so important to understand them. And we talk oftentimes about the unflinching truth, and then I think of the average person, present day, who might hear stories like this and say, "This is absolute hell on earth." There's no way you could pay me enough. There's no way you could convince me to ever serve in this fashion, to ever sign up to do this. How different are young people today? How different are we today than 100 years ago, than 80 years ago?
Well, young people today are much more educated than they were back then in terms of, they've been bombarded through social media and just all the ways of communication today about all the horrible things that happen out there. And I don't blame them for saying, why would I do that? And that's where they need to learn from history that, if we don't do it, who is going to do it? Somebody needs to do that. And one little moving experience I had, in 1965, I was going through pilot training, and I foolishly rolled a TR-3 and broke a bunch of bones. And I was in Deer Lodge Hospital in Winnipeg. And I was in a two-bedroom, and there was a World War I vet in the other bed. And he would wake up in the middle of the night screaming because the Huns were coming through the ceiling after him. He'd been gassed at Ypres. And, after 2 nights of this, I said, look, he's a great old guy. I really respect him, but can I move to another room? But he's the kind of guy that he suffered for his whole life, and he just lost it because they were always there and they were always after him. And young people today, I hope that they don't look at that and say, I will never do that. I think they should look at that and say, I need to do better. We need to do better. we need to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. And that's the ethic, I think, that has forced, in World War II, 10% of the population of Canada, 10% were in uniform. 1 out of every 10 Canadians wore a uniform in World War II. We won't be there again, hopefully, to have to do that. But that's the kind of commitment that I think everybody should, I would like everybody to feel. Whether they do or not, that's a work in progress.
Well, like I said, I watched Passchendaele just last night. I mean, truthfully, I watched it like 7 hours ago. And just even the numbers at the beginning of that film were staggering. Canada at that time, 1910s, a young nation of about 8 million people, 600,000 signed up to serve.
And that was 8% of the population in World War I. 8% were in uniform and serving.
But because I think at the time, and World War II certainly as well, the countries and our understanding of freedom and our way of life was under existential threat. And people, were either, of course, many people in stateside as well drafted, but many people willingly signed up. Today, in 2025, what's your understanding of what's drawing people to sign up to serve their country? Everything has changed, including how war is waged, international relationships, alliances. We hear a lot about Canada's NATO commitment.
Yeah, and we're in a struggle right now. When I say we, I mean Canada's in a struggle. The military is in a struggle to attract enough people. We are desperately short of people. One example, we're supposed to have at least 150 fighter pilots in the Air Force. We've got somewhere around 75. And we're going to be implementing a new fighter, the F-35. We don't have the people to do that. And that's one critical area. There's other critical areas around the military, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force, where we are desperately short of people. And it's such a great life. There's so many things that we are allowed to do, that we get to do, that nobody else gets to do. And that's serve with great people, meet other great people, and have a sense of commitment, a sense of I'm accomplishing something important here. And we need to reinstill that.
Well, you've done, and I've said this to you before, and I say it with great respect, is talking to you about your careers. It's a lot like, I've interviewed Chris Hadfield before. It's a lot like interviewing an astronaut in the sense that not a lot of people understand what it's like to be behind the controls of a CF-18 or to command a CF-18 squadron. Now, you say we have about 75 fighter pilots in Canada right now. You said we need about double that, Laurie?
At least.
That's not just your average person. It's a very specialized skill.
It takes many years for a guy to become qualified and competent in an airplane like the F-18, or certainly now the F-35. And I know Chris Hadfield. We flew together a little bit. We flew with him when he went through F-18 training. I was on the training squadron.
Wow.
Staff, so I know Chris pretty well. There's an exceptional Canadian, by any measure. We need more Chris Hadfields, but they're hard to find. They're hard to train.
Is this the same as in any other industry? We talked to our friends from the Alberta Chambers of Commerce the day after Budget Day, and they talked about developing talent, and they talked about recruitment and retention. Is it the same idea? Recruiting and training people for these highly specialized roles in the military?
Well, it's recruiting, and we have to get our folks in faster than we can. We recruit people, and then they sit around and wait, sometimes for a couple of years before anything happens, and they get tired and they go somewhere else. So we need to do a much, much better job of getting them in the door and getting them doing something that gets them on their way to being. Now, it takes at least 10 years to get a guy qualified, or a gal qualified, to lead a section of 4 F-18s or 4 F-35s, whatever. So we don't get these folks off the shelf at Walmart. It takes a lot of work and a lot of training and a lot of commitment, and we need to do a better job of that.
Randall, did you say 2011 was the first year of No Stone Left Alone? Is that right?
Yep, November the 10th, 2011.
Look at these numbers. Now, I'll note that your team, again, nostoneleftalone.ca, has not updated the numbers, obviously, for this year because everything is still unfolding. But as of last year, as you said, almost 710,000 poppies placed, 327 ceremonies in 2024 alone across Canada internationally, almost 90,000 students engaged in 2024. You have, over the last 14 years, I suppose, an opportunity now to see, I guess you might call them alumni of the program, graduates of No Stone Left Alone, who will, grow into young adults and then adults in middle age and beyond with a more clear understanding of what this is all about. I wonder if that maybe fits into what Laurie's talking about, people with an increased conviction or an increased understanding of the importance of the military. Have you heard stories like that from young adults?
Absolutely. We had one of our students send a letter to a soldier that was in Afghanistan. And that particular letter and that particular soldier came to me one day. We were at the base, and he said that letter from that student moved him more than most. Think of the student taking the time to write a letter. He was so moved by our no stone ceremony that it got to his heart, and he understood the service and sacrifice of this soldier. But I want to send one message to your audience right now too. I have a dear, dear friend who was one of our first soldiers we met, and he said something about today. He said, if you're a Canadian Armed Forces member, family member, listening to this podcast or this get-together, in the morning, they're somber. They're thinking of all of their brothers that they served with, and some who had died, but they're really thinking of the story you watched last night, the band of brothers. It's really real. When you're a soldier, you become a friend for life. And they would do anything to protect them and die for them to save their brother. And it's very real. I've seen it, I've heard it, and I have dear friends that are serving today that would do anything for their brothers. And I want to recognize that today, especially on Remembrance Day. And they, as Laurie said earlier, after they were somber and quiet, then they'd go to the bar and they'd release some of their tension. Yeah.
One of the comments that Jim Parks, the now 101-year-old veteran, has mentioned is that if you ever have the opportunity to go to a military cemetery like Benny-Sumer or any of the ones in Europe that you've been to, is that don't just go to the ones at the front. Go to the back. Nobody ever goes to see them, and just say hello and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's remarkable.
There's one gravesite at Groesbeek in the Netherlands, and there's about 3,000 or so Canadians buried there. We visit there on day 3 of the Nijmegen March every year, so I was there 3 times, and there was the usual field of honor, but there was one way over by the fence. And I asked, who's that? And I forget the guy's name. He said he was the guy who tended Groesbeek Cemetery for years and years and years. And when he passed away, his wish was to be buried with his boys.
Wow.
Now, the rules say you can't bury civilians side by side, but they made a special dispensation, and they allowed him to be buried over by the fence, but he was in at least the cemetery with his boys. And that was his whole purpose in life. And I talked to the guy who was tending it then, and he said his fondest wish is to be killed by a tree falling on him in Groesbeek and be buried with his boys. Wow. So the Dutch really, really get it, because they've been the beneficiaries of Canadian sacrifice in a big, big way in World War II.
Well, I want to scroll back here and see if I can find a comment in our live chat. An audience member Tony was talking about she was in, oh gosh, I hope I can find it, said that she was in Belize and ran into a Dutch family. Tony, my apologies. I think I've lost your comment here, but basically just said like it was incredible for her. She goes on to say, by the way, Tony contributing in our chat today says, I'm really proud that Canada has always been known as being peacekeepers, and that's where I feel like our military is in some of its best works as times are so different now. But talked about even in Belize, running into a Dutch family. There's been a very special connection between Canada and Holland.
Oh, absolutely.
To state the very obvious, but these marches every year.
Yep. If you're Canadian in Holland, you're pretty cool. If you're Canadian military in Holland, you're a god, because they have never forgotten. And Dutch children know more about Canadian military history than most Canadian children, which is another statement, and that's things that No Stone left alone and others are trying to remedy. And we're going to do it, one gravesite, one student at a time.
No stone will be left alone.
Now, having said that, there's 7,700 locations in Canada with veterans' headstones, 6,850 in 80 countries around the world. So we've got some work to do at No Stone.
You bet we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must obviously be an evolving mandate for you. As how has the organization evolved over the nearly 15 years?
Oh, it's amazing. You said something, a whole bunch of things that come to mind. Some of our students that were there 15 years ago now have kids of their own, so that they're taking their children to our ceremonies. How has it evolved? We're a small organization. We have one full-time employee in it, and 15,000 volunteers across the world. So we stay lean, and we're not mean, but we stay very lean. And our organization is organic. It's grown. A teacher would do a No Stone ceremony in 2023. They would take that ceremony with them if they change schools or change provinces. They believe in our story so much that they take it with them. Laurie and I we were at a school in northeast Edmonton the other day in front of 350 children, and when they see soldiers, there was 3 soldiers in uniform and Laurie, the children are drawn to that. They want to talk to you. One student I saw salute, these are grade 3 to grade 6 students, and they got up and they saluted, did a salute to Laurie, and it's that mystique. It's odd to say, but it's a mystique of the Canadian Armed Forces members still is real. And these young children they're drawn to that. And we had an extraordinary time, didn't we there, Laurie?
We sure did.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce this community in France? Is it Lara? L-A-R-R-E? Tracy says my mother's uncle served in the Royal Canadian Air Force, was shot down over Lara, France. On June 16th, 1944, they crashed into a farmer's field, and the people nearby erected a monument in honor of those Canadian members, says the town continues to honor them every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's remarkable to think of the Canadians being honored and recognized like this across Europe.
They're all over the world. And I can't remember the exact location, but it's in the Pyrenees, and there was a Lancaster, I think, crashed. Everybody was killed. And I think there's 6 headstones there. And this is at the top of the Pyrenees between France and Spain. And people are there every year honoring those Canadians. They've never met, but they recognize the importance.
And we call that a no-stone ceremony. In fact, this year they flew in helicopters. They replaced the headstones.
Yep.
So now they have actual Canadian Armed Forces headstones in that particular cemetery. That's a great story, Laurie.
There's tons of stories like that with just half a dozen that are being recognized.
I had the opportunity in 2024 outside the town of St. Croix-sur-Mer, where my dad was wounded. I was asked by the mayor to come and help lay a wreath for the Canadians, and they've got a maple tree there. But the other thing over in Europe is the Commonwealth War Graves Committee, how they maintain these cemeteries. And it's odd to say these cemeteries are beautiful, but they are incredible. And the beautifully white, every year they're maintained, and the flowers that are left at every one of these, at Holland and in Benny-sur-Mer.
In Netherlands, people compete to tend a Canadian grave. So every grave is individually managed, if you will, by a Dutch person. But
like 80 years later.
80 years later. They never forget, lest we forget.
And same with our cemetery in Krakow.
Yep.
It's exactly as you described it. It's spotless, and they're clean. They have different flowers, and they take such pride in taking care of them.
I don't think that it's odd to say that a cemetery is beautiful, but I certainly understand what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
But I've experienced the same thing even here at home in Alberta's capital city. We live not far from a cemetery. For local reference, for Albertans, along 107th Avenue, just east of 124th Street, just off downtown, just west of downtown. And I often will walk my dogs through that cemetery, and there is row upon row upon row upon row of Canadian servicemen buried there.
Mm-hmm.
And I have spent literally hours standing there reflecting on names that I do not know. I never knew these people. Yep. But just reflecting on it, trying to understand what their experience may have been like, doing the math and realizing not how old, but how young they were.
18.
And it's a truly, I mean, it's striking visually. It's horrific when your brain starts to process the math. We always talk on this show when we see numbers, whether it's job numbers, unemployment numbers, voter turnout, whatever it is. Casualties. These are people.
Mm-hmm.
These are people, and the ripple effects of their service and their passing is major. But yeah, I've had many quiet moments in there in reflection. I hope that many people are participating in something like that today.
One of the people I'm working with right now, his name was Jimmy Todd. He was joined at 17, Loyal Edmonton Regiment. He married a Scottish war bride. They moved back and lived 10 kilometers from where I am now. And the family has given me 150 love letters that he wrote to his fiancée. And in one of them, he says, "There's a lot going over here," and he used the line that you've heard so many times, and it's written right in his pencil on this little flimsy piece of paper: "This war is hell." And so you hear that all the time, but I've never seen it actually written by somebody who believed it.
Daniel's in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, we visited my wife's great uncle's grave who died in Vimy visited in France, said the graves are immaculate. Michael is watching today and says, I'm thinking of both of my grandfathers who served in World War II. One is a bomber, the other a code breaker. Says they've since passed, but I'm so grateful to have had them in my life. Michael says, also thinking of my great uncle, whom I never met. He served in World War II, but never came home. Can I keep you guys for a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
I have so much more I want to ask you about. I want to give the audience, our live tuning audience, an opportunity to ask questions as well. Randall Purvis, co-founder, he's quick to point out, co-founder of No Stone Left Alone. Don Levers, his book, Our Father's Footsteps. If you want to connect with Don or pick up a copy of his book, learn about what he's working on now, you can always check out donleversbooks.com. We'll punch that into the show notes. We're also talking to a former member of Parliament, a former parliamentary secretary, and of course, retired Lieutenant Colonel Laurie Hawn in this special Remembrance Day episode of the show. If you happen to be catching this later and it's prompting a thought, a memory, a recollection, a point you think this audience needs to hear, you can always send us an email anytime to talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people, so you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap, made local by Epcor.
This special episode of the show is happening with the support of Peace Hills Insurance. You know, more and more Albertans, more and more Canadians are digging deeper into their insurance coverage because, well, many are experiencing premiums on the rise. Service, well, not exactly matching that same trend. If that fits your experience, check out peacehillsinsurance.com today. This is an Edmonton-based insurance company serving Canadians coast to coast, in particular out west with home, auto, and business products. Peace Hills Insurance is owned by the Samson Cree Nation, and their mission, Wakotowin, that's a Cree word, represents the interconnectedness of all beings, a mission to be a respected national insurer providing creative and responsive solutions, a unique insurance company that truly cares. Well, they do this by giving back to the communities that they serve, working with broker partners to fund local projects, to offer meaningful and stable employment opportunities with a unique corporate culture, and of course, offering policyholders compassionate and dedicated service. You can learn more about Peace Hills Insurance. Connect with an agent today by visiting peacehillsinsurance.com. You know, around the world, University of Alberta alumni are pushing boundaries. They're lifting others up. They're sparking change, oftentimes outside of the spotlight. Well, now's your chance to help bring those stories forward. If you know someone, a U of A alum, who is bold and passionate and purpose-driven, we're asking you to nominate them for a University of Alberta Alumni Award. We're looking for change makers and world shapers and status quo breakers. Grads from the U of A who are redefining what's possible. Grads who deserve to be celebrated. The Alumni Awards honor achievement in 5 categories: professional excellence, university service, emerging leadership, provincial national influence, and groundbreaking innovation. It's straightforward to nominate. The deadline coming up at midnight on December 15th at uab.ca/nominate. That's uab.ca/nominate. You can check out the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce at edmontonchamberofcommerce.com. That includes their events page coming up on Friday, November 21st. You can join the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce for their Coffee with the Chamber, hosted by Morgard at the Rice Howard Place Tenant Lounge. This will be a relaxed morning of coffee, connection, community, bringing together Edmonton's business leaders and entrepreneurs for meaningful conversations, fueled by a little bit of caffeine. This edition will also feature the Man Van, which is a mobile health clinic put out by Prostate Cancer Canada, promoting wellness in the business community. This is open to members and future members alike. If you're considering membership with the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, let me encourage you to do it. We're proud to be members ourselves. Get your Friday started right on November 21st. Tickets are just $10. You can get started today at edmontonchamber.com. And a huge congratulations to our friends at Friesen Brothers. This has been a huge week for them as they have officially opened their first mother doe
Bread Company. That's right. You can check out motherdoughbreadco.com to learn more about the 70 years of Friesen Brothers, but this is brand new. Now, of course, we've celebrated the Friesen Brothers sourdough, the Friesen Brothers bakers, and the legacy that they have forged. Right now at Winterburn Point. It's open just a few days ago. You can check out the Mother Dough Bread Co. sandwich shop, open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Whether you're after a coffee and a cinnamon toast to kickstart your day, a really great sourdough sandwich for lunch, or you want to take home a full loaf of sourdough, focaccia, or a baguette for supper, you'll find it all there. Again, motherdoughbreadco.com. Joined by No Stone Left Alone co-founder Randall Purvis, Our Father's Footsteps author Don Levers, and Lieutenant Colonel retired Laurie Hawn on a special Remembrance Day episode of the show. You know, Don, it strikes me with this book, Our Father's Footsteps, or any of the movies that we've referenced, the works of literature that people have looked to better understand certain conflicts throughout history and the sacrifices that are made. You tell these stories, the depth of your reporting, of your journalism, of your storytelling is really impressive, but it also just reminds me there are so many stories. How have you managed to find the ones you've told? Talk to us about the connection you have with these legacies.
One of the ones that I did in Our Father's Footsteps was through an interview that I did with our friend Gord Stanky.
Yes.
And the next day I got a note from this lady that says she had these letters from her dad, and so I was able to tell his story. And because they weren't alive any longer, I had to use their letters and the family history books and the journals to delve into their stories. And then, fortunately, we have the war diaries that are available in so many cases. So I was able to fill in some of the spots that they were at. And in the case of my dad, I was able to follow him, you know, after he went back into service, follow him into Holland when a friend of his was killed. I'm now working on this story of Jimmy Todd and using the war diaries to follow him all the way from the time he became a scout sniper with the Royal Edmonton Regiment, all the way up through to northern Italy and into Ortona, where the Royal Edmonton Regiment took such a beating. So I spent 6 hours researching the other day on another story of some airmen, and that allowed me to write about half a page, because you keep finding these other things and wanting to verify these facts. Laurie is working on his book, and he's got a lot of pictures, and it's getting the rights and finding out and showing where those pictures came. It takes hours,
especially decades removed.
Yes.
You know, we live in an era of, and I'm saying it by chance with a smile on my face, nothing great about it, an era of misinformation and disinformation and understanding what truth is. Sometimes now, even the definition of what truth is appears to be more flexible than it should be.
Truth is in the eye of the beholder.
Yes. Yeah, and
believe
history written by the
believe.
victors.
Exactly.
Right?
As Winston Churchill said, history will be kind to me because I intend to write it.
Right. Can you talk to us about your book, this book project?
Well, it's been going for more or less 30 years, pecking away at it, and it's in two parts. The first part is titled, It Seemed Like a Good Idea at the Time, and it's a story of my service in the RCAF. The second part is, the first part is fighter pilot in the RCF, second part is fighter pilot in the House brackets of Commons, and go into some of my experience with politics.
How did your service with the RCAF influence your career in politics? How did you approach politics differently than everybody else, as far as you could tell?
Well, I was a little unique at the time, and my military service, my Air Force service, was a huge asset to me in getting elected, because I said, look, that guy's a little bit different. Maybe I should, listen to him or pay attention. And of course, it took 2 tries to beat Anne McClellan, who I have tremendous respect for.
Landslide Annie.
Landslide Annie. Great lady. She'd done a ton of good work. We were on different teams, but that didn't matter. So the Air Force side of me was very, very helpful in that. Part of it was, you learn a little bit of discipline, hopefully, and how you approach things. You learn about hard work. Politics is hard work if you're going to take it seriously. In the Air Force and the Army and the Navy, we were brought up with the ethic of you got to work hard. You got to work hard. When I was commanding officer of 416 Squadron, my motto was work hard and play hard. Got to do both. And at the end, If everybody's doing the same thing, pulling the same direction, you'll get to where you want to go. So in politics, I had really, really great teams supporting me, and that's, I said I'm the hood ornament. I'm the part that's being pushed into Ann McClellan's backside, so to speak. But if the rest of the car isn't pushing, the hood ornament's not going anywhere. So you've got to remember that you are the hood ornament. You need all those teammates behind you. It's the same in the Army and the Navy and military service. Every person has something to offer, but you better have everybody pulling on the same rope or you're not going to get there.
Do you still find yourself, I mean, obviously I know you're still politically connected. I see you're a man about town. Everybody seems to be, remains curious for your take on what's happening present day in Ottawa. Were you keeping a keen eye on anything military related in Mark Carney's first budget?
Well, for sure. I mean, the future of the Canadian Forces is, critical to me and frankly critical to the country. And it's been neglected for a long, long time by governments of both stripes. And the budget came out and it said some good things, makes some good promises. We need to see the deliverables now. So it's easy to say, but it's tough to do. And we're climbing a pretty steep cliff from where we have fallen. So it's going to take a while to get back, and it's going to take continuous attention by the government, by the military, by Canadians to make sure we can get back to some semblance of where we used to be. We're desperately short of people in all three services, and the reserves need to be seven or eight times bigger than they are now. But it's going to take a long time to get there. But promises are cheap. Let's see what the government actually does.
Yeah, it's safe to say, I think, in large part due to prompting and pressure from the President of the United States, Canada is now on track to meet that NATO target of 2% of GDP for defense spending this fiscal year, about 5 years ahead of previous commitments, and committing to a significantly higher benchmark, reaching 5% of GDP on defense spending by 2035.
That's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And whether we get 3.5% of that is hard military stuff. The other 1.5% is infrastructure and things that support national defense and security. So it's a tall order that Canadians hope are ready to accept, because the money's got to come from somewhere.
Well, why do you think that Liberal and Conservative governments underfunded military over the past number of decades?
Well, I don't want to blame the public, but until the public cares, government won't care. And I think one of the things that Donald Trump has done, amongst the many questionable things, is he's awakened in people, look, we got to pay attention to this, because the world as we knew it before isn't the world it is today. So we've got to start taking more on ourselves, not relying on the U.S., because we relied on the U.S. for defense and security hugely in the past. And we just can't do that anymore. And Trump has made that clear.
Is NATO more important now than ever?
Absolutely. Because NATO is now 32 countries, but 31 are clearly on the same side. One is there, but there's some strings attached with that. And we've got to recognize that, and we've got to pull our own strings. We'll be more tied to Europe, which we should be. We will always be tied to the U.S., and that's just history and geography and things like that. But we've got to look more to Europe. And Europe has to look to us, I think, because Europe is concerned about America. They're concerned about Donald Trump. And, of course, we're right next door. So we're going to be looked at as somebody that needs to step up more to compensate somewhat. We can never compensate for everything America does. That's just not possible. But we need to be stepping forward to do as much as we can to counterbalance the questionable things that people are sensing from the United States.
In our live chat, powered by Park Power, Matt says, if anybody's interested, Norm Christie's excellent documentaries. Matt, I'm going to make a note. I've not heard of these. Says excellent documentaries on Canadians in World War I for King and Empire, and World War II for King and Country are on YouTube, and says they're free to watch. Ms. Katie sharing one of her tattoos is poppies for her dad, who served in the military his entire life. Ms. Katie says that was the only job he ever had. Cassandra says, my dad was a World War II veteran in the Navy. They escorted and protected American warships from Canada to Europe. It's incredible to see all these people sharing their personal stories. Cassandra says, Laurie's right, talking about this, says the public didn't want government to be spending money on military. That's probably why government wasn't spending money on military. I respect that you all have commitments today. We're talking it's now about 9:30 Mountain Time. Of course, 90 minutes from now, a nation will fall silent and remember. As we prepare for that, I want to ask each of you for a closing thought. Typically, as they would say in ceremony, like a charge to the audience, a challenge, something to reflect on. Randall, we'll start with you.
Okay, so today, please take 2 minutes of silence and be thoughtful and take a real moment to think about the lives we lead and those who have made it possible. And on our behalf, understand that we at No Stone Left Alone will not stop until there is no stone left alone.
Remarkable. Don Levers.
I guess for me, growing up, families taking part in remembrance ceremonies. I was in the cadets. I led the combined cadet corps in Vancouver through the Remembrance Day ceremonies in downtown Vancouver, which was pretty incredible. And so today, just taking not just that moment, those 2 minutes, but take time to remember throughout the year the sacrifices that all of our families made. I'm very lucky, and those of us at this table, and yourself included, Ryan, you served, Laurie, but for those of us who didn't, we have been so blessed in Canada that we haven't had to do what our families did before us. And just remember how lucky we are because of the sacrifices that those families made in Korea, because we forget that one quite often. But Korea and World War I and World War II and the other conflicts we've had, and that we are very lucky to be sitting here being able to talk freely about these things.
Isn't that the truth? To speak out, to challenge government, to hold truth to power. I'm grateful that you shared the story. It's a sad story, obviously, of the loss of a friend and a colleague in Norway. That's something that people wouldn't think of. I mean, so many Canadians, millions of Canadians will have such different perspectives today.
Well, Canadians have made that kind of sacrifice around the world. And that's what people need to remember. When they go to a Remembrance Day ceremony and they look around, just picture 10% of those people, whoever's there, being in uniform and going off, and a big chunk of them not coming home to families and friends and the future that they left behind to build somebody else's future. And that's what we've done. Canada's done through the years, is we've built futures for other people at the sacrifice of our own. And that's a noble, noble thing to do. And so please remember that on Remembrance Day, that we're here because other people, and we have a way of life because other people have sacrificed to give us that. So they gave of their tomorrows to save our todays.
That's Lieutenant Colonel Laurie Hawn, alongside his good pal Randall Purvis, here talking about No Stone Left Alone. Again, you can read more about that initiative, connect, and consider a donation today. Randall, I know you guys can use funds as well. This stuff doesn't happen for free.
Absolutely.
NoStoneLeftAlone.ca. Also so grateful to have Don Levers joining us in studio. You can check out donleversbooks.com for more on our Father's footsteps. And Don, this other book project you've been talking to us about, for people that'll be keen to know when they can get their hands on that one. Some authors don't prefer to be put on the clock, but what can we expect?
It's going to be a while, hopefully sometime in 2026, and I have a couple of projects that I'm working on right now, so hopefully sometime in 2026.
Well, I just admire your storytelling ability and your commitment to this. Thanks again for sharing it with us today.
It's been my pleasure, and you've been a great supporter. You read the first lines of the book before it was even published. You read it on air, and I really appreciate that and the support you've given me over the last number of years. Thank you.
You bet, Don. And I want to thank this audience for participating in this episode. Not done yet. There's a very special friend of the show that we'll remember in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that this is on your radar, as we remember the service and the sacrifice of many Canadians. On a day like Remembrance Day, we also remember and consider first responders. Kubi Energy at kubi.ca is proud to launch a brand new initiative, and that is the Powering Those Who Protect program. This is a program that offers a 5% discount on solar systems and installations for first responders and those who are serving our communities. That includes police, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, nurses, search and rescue personnel, 911 dispatchers, and members of the Canadian Armed Forces across Alberta and British Columbia.
This discount can also be combined with existing rebates and government incentives that'll help lower the upfront cost of going solar and improving your return on your investment. You can learn more about the Powering Those Who Protect program and get a free solar quote today by visiting kuby.ca. That's KUBY.ca. Real Talk is proud to be supporting UCAN Youth Services as they kick off their capital campaign, looking to raise $2.5 million to bring their brand new location in a beautiful historic building downtown Edmonton up to speed. Now, of course, UCAN Youth Services is a nonprofit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence, and they need our help to do it. You can learn more about the work that they're doing by visiting ucan.ca. That includes the Relentless Outreach Program, where their workers are working with the top 50 list. These are the 50 young people, 12 to 17, that are most frequently interacting with Edmonton police. Not in a good way, but UCAN Youth Services Relentless Outreach workers are stopping at nothing to empower these youth in making positive, healthy, and life-changing decisions. I was so proud to host UCAN's celebration night just a few evenings ago, where we heard from 3 graduates, 3 of their alumni in these programs. Incredible stories and wonderful return on investment. Invest in our community today by making a donation at ucan.ca. North Road Investment Council proudly working with successful Canadians, both in and outside our home province of Alberta, who are, of course, navigating the complexities of running those successful businesses, setting their businesses and families up for success, and, of course, also looking to plan their retirement. A lot of those private clients and institutions are asking the same question. You know, if most mutual funds aren't keeping up with the benchmark, why not just own the benchmark? You know, research from Standard & Poor's S&P in 2024 shows that over 80% of Canadian equity mutual funds underperform the index they track, and that's why the team at North Road Investment Council is building customized, passive portfolios designed to capture index returns while still respecting your values and your preferences. For families and institutions with around $2 million or more to invest, North Road is creating fully customized factor portfolios within Canada and the U.S. You can connect with them, Marshall, Carey, and the team by visiting their website, northroadic.com. And California Closets, if you're a regular listener to this show, you know I am an evangelist for California Closets. Their custom closets and storage solutions have allowed our family, when we first invested on a relatively modest budget 8 years ago, to make the most of our space. And to this day, those installations, our entertainment center in our family room, an incredible walk-in closet in our primary bedroom, a storage solution, a wardrobe for my spillover clothing, still looks wonderful, as good as it did the day it was installed. You know, it's guaranteed for life. When you invest with California Closets, a proudly Canadian-owned company that's manufacturing everything it installs right here in our home province of Alberta. California Closets can work with any space and any budget, and it all starts with a free consultation. You can connect with this proudly Canadian-owned and operated company. Request that free consultation today by visiting californiaclosets.ca. I love this from Tony in our Super Chat. I want to thank everybody that made Super Chat contributions today. It's so greatly appreciated. Tony says, what a great panel on the show. She says, I'm so proud of our Canadian military and how we're viewed globally. Tony says, Canada is definitely not broken. I know that a lot of people will hear stories today, and when we start talking about military funding or we talk about military recruitment, and we'll go, yeah, gosh, well, we sure do have challenges ahead of us. Laurie, in this interview, made that very clear, but at the same time, such a proud and incredible legacy. Johnny, today I saw recurring comments in the chat. So many people talking about these young men. Laurie. I mean, even referencing that with his own service. Well removed, obviously, from World War II, years later, but still signing up at 17 years of age. You hear the stories of these young people, in particular, young men that were lying about their age in the late 1930s, early 1940s, so they could serve in combat, so they could fight for freedom for their country.
Yeah, and I really liked how Laurie touched on the fact that, I know people are going to say it's because kids these days are soft, but it's just a different time now. We're living in, for the majority of people in North America, in peace times. We haven't seen war. We haven't seen bombs. We haven't seen our friends perish in front of us. We haven't had to go over to other countries. And when we have, as Laurie again alluded to, war is very technical these days. A lot of war is fought through screens and goggles. That's not putting down
different
anything that people are doing over there. Obviously, in Afghanistan and those wars, Desert Storm as well, that was a lot of in-your-face combat as well. But it's a different time, right? And when you look back at some of this footage, it's amazing. Some of the footage, I can't even believe they had the thought back then to tape some of these men coming on to the beaches on Juno Beach and during D-Day to put it in the U-boats and to have it showing them, because you can literally zoom in and see the fear on these guys' face. And these are 18, 19, 20. Like you said, some of them 16 years old sneaking into the Army. And so I have great respect for veterans, no matter if you support whatever war they were in or not. It is just... It's mind-boggling to me, because, no matter how much courage you think you may have as a man or woman or a human being, to get up and go do what they did was pretty crazy. I'm getting a little choked up.
I heard it. I heard it in your voice.
And I'll just shout out. Here's my grandfather fought in the Korean War. Well, didn't fight. He was part of the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps.
What's his name?
His name was Bob Bickle. He was a lieutenant. He was a corporal rather. So basically, they work as part of logistics, right? So food, ammunition. He was a corporal in charge of. Kind of like a lead driver in charge of a small section of vehicles that brought water and made sure water was available. But still, near the end of his life, he passed away in 2023 at the age of 89. We watched through some videos, and he told me, there's a lot of pain in these guys' eyes who were over there. But he managed to tell me some pretty frightening stories, even as not being someone who was right on the front lines doing the dirty work, someone who was, making sure a team of people were responsible for keeping people from dying of dehydration. He told me some, just a couple pretty scary stories about seeing friends of his or acquaintances in the Army being, executed and things like that. And it's just amazing to me that today we still have. I mean, we heard about the Dutch children, but it's all the children involved with No Stone Unturned. Seeing the pictures of them, it's pretty heartening to think that they still care and they still show respect, because I mean, it's hard to imagine these times when you don't live in anything that even remotely resembles that time.
There's no way to process it. And with No Stone Left Alone, you're right. Such an incredible program. You talk about the Royal Canadian Navy in that era and in and around D-Day, using that fleet of its own warships to combat these German U-boats. And that included like destroyers and frigates and the minesweepers, and they called them corvettes. And these were all what were supporting the D-Day landings. Can you tee up this short for me? You know the one that I'm talking about. We heard about this firsthand, and I'm going to punch this into our live chat this episode, and we'll also punch it into the show notes for those of you that are catching this later on the podcast on YouTube. The episode that we streamed exactly 1 year ago today, titled Forgiveness and Grace, featuring World War II veteran Marty Jones, a remarkable conversation. I saw Scarlett in our live chat says that she was at the Oilers game last night on the 10th of November for their Remembrance Day feature. She says a soldier born in 1925, it was Marty Jones, she says, who was honored. She says, "Oh Canada," the national anthem was a little more emotional than usual. Scarlett says, "Thank you for your service." You can check out that full episode, our feature interview with then 99-year-old Marty Jones. He is now 100. It was my huge honor to attend his 100th birthday party just this past summer. And Johnny, we pulled this from his conversation with us, talking about post-war forgiveness and grace.
Some of the enemy, the German immigrants, boy, they ended up good Canadians, blended in with us with no problems.
Marty, I don't know that everybody would be able to reach a point like that you did.
Yeah, but see, that's called forgiveness and grace. I never held a grudge. In 1979, when I was in Germany, one fella, I stopped there to stay at his hotel. He said, "Are you an American?" I said, "No, I'm Canadian." So he says, "You want to stay here tonight, eh?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "I own this hotel. I closed my restaurant, but I'll go open it up to you and your wife can stay here for no cost on me." And here he is, a former Gestapo. And I said, "Thank you." And boy, I was treated great in Germany by the enemy. We ended up good people, all of us.
Such a remarkable perspective from Marty Jones at 99, now 100, talking to us about signing up with his brother, fighting alongside his brother on D-Day. He survived D-Day. I love this comment from Bucky in our live chat, who says, "When I was young, I'd put myself in the shoes of the soldiers. And then when I became a father, it was my son that I pictured." It says, "Now that I'm old," says Bucky, "I wish peace for all young people." That's an incredible way to put it. Emily says, "My great-grandmother's 19-year-old brother served with the Royal Newfoundland Regiment in World War I. He fought at Passchendaele and was medevaced out of Ypres with TB, which he succumbed to in London." Says, "My grandfather and his two brothers served in World War II for Scotland. My grandpa ultimately ended the war as a squadron leader in the RAF, training young pilots in Mesopotamia." Story after story after story, Johnny, being shared here by Real Talkers. Really remarkable stuff. I like this from Michael, who says it would be great if we could get an up-and-coming Canadian director to produce a new war movie to commemorate a famous Canadian military mission. Says Passchendaele is great, but we do need more of those films. What was there's one that was recently out, Hyena Road. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. I've not, but this was a 2015 Canadian war drama that was also written, directed, and produced by Paul Gross. He was, of course, I believe he was the writer, director, and certainly the star of Passchendaele as well. Won 3 Canadian Screen Awards back in 2015, based on the true story of Route Hyena, formerly named Route Fosters, which was built by Task Force Kandahar during that war in Afghanistan, involving many units across the Canadian Armed Forces. So maybe another one to check out, Hyena Road, which was released in 2015. I know a lot of people will be spending today reflecting, and we encourage you to do so. When you do so, we encourage you to send us a note. Let us know where your head and heart is at. Let us know what this conversation today spurred within you. Let us know moving forward if recent developments politically, geopolitically, or otherwise have impacted what Remembrance Day means to you. And we will continue to reflect through this week on emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Friends, these episodes don't happen without the support of Real Talk sponsors, and that includes Pathways Alliance. This is a partnership between the 6 biggest companies in Alberta's oil sands. You can learn more about it, who they are, by visiting pathwaysalliance.ca. This is, of course, Canada's energy industry working together to provide the energy the world needs while advancing environmental innovation and projects. You know, energy projects are supporting jobs and communities across Canada in a big way. And Canada's oil sands produce so much more than just oil. You can learn more about the Pathways Alliance initiative, see how Canada's oil sands are fueling the economy and powering innovation for Canada's energy future, strengthening the economy for all of Canada. Visit pathwaysalliance.ca to learn more. And by the way, Scarlett at that Oilers game last night, what a game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Kind of the Connor McDavid show, and if you ask me, one of his all-time performances. You know, Albertans are winning every single day at playalberta.ca. You can visit playalberta.ca or download the app today with casino winners every hour, jackpots worth millions, and revenue that stays in the province There's never been a better time to sign up. Right now, Real Talkers can score a $50 casino bonus when you make a minimum $50 deposit with the code Ryan50. That's all one word, Ryan50, for a $50 casino bonus. You must be 18 or older to play, and if you do gamble, please use your game sense. Don't forget, every Thursday on the show, we feature big wins for Albertans on the provincial, national, and international stage. It's one of our favorite features, Alberta Wins, presented Thursdays on Real Talk by our friends at Play Alberta.
Yeah, what did I tell you yesterday? You guys with your, the Oilers are in trouble. And what did I tell you, Ryan? All the Oilers need is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I'm telling you right now, all they need is mid-goaltending, some other guys to pass them the puck. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, though. You have a game that's 9-1, and then you have a close game against, you say what you want about the Blue Jackets, right? Never been, deep in the finals in a while, but like a great team, well coached. And that's what Connor can do out of nowhere. That's what Connor and Leon bring to the team. All you have to do is get to the playoffs. And if Connor can do that, once or twice a series, it's the tipping of the scales of one or two games, and that's why they go so far. So I just hope the team figures out whatever it is they need to figure out, and let's not scream for a new goalie. We've talked about that. There is no other goalie.
We can't afford a new goalie right now.
There isn't one. There isn't one out there that you could bring in that could mesh with the team quickly and just be better. That's available right now. And like you said, that we could afford. Stuart Skinner has gotten the team to the playoffs 2 years in a row. What they need is just to be a little tighter defensively and have a couple more nights from Connor and Leon like that. And it's the opposite of the last 2 years where you lost by one goal and then you lost by one or two games. Win a couple games, score a couple extra goals, maybe save an
You guys know what's happening
maybe save
here.
an extra one or two. But
you guys see what's happening here. Johnny has Stuart Skinner in his hockey pool, and he doesn't want him traded out of Edmonton.
No, I don't. What I know is that, goalie is one of the hardest positions to play, and it's one of those positions where you're set up to fail. Like, no matter how good of a goalie you are, you're going to get beat some nights. You're going to get scored on. You're going to have your pants pulled down by someone like Connor McDavid. So they often bear the brunt of everything. And yeah, you can look at numbers and say Stewart's this, Stewart's that, but you can also just look back at what history will see, and is that goalie got them to the Stanley Cup final once, twice, probably this year a third time. And I really this is the story of the Oilers. They make you cry all season, and then they make you tears of joy and elation throughout the playoffs, right?
Until they make you cry at the end.
Yeah, we just need that inch or two more this year.
Mariah says, I respectfully but strongly disagree, Johnny. Says they need more than just McDavid and Draisaitl. They need a team effort. We can debate this all day long.
That's what they said last year.
And how about this? Talking hockey, and we'll end with this. Stephen Fetter, from a hockey perspective, says, I'm not looking to fight at all. But on this day, I think it's important to remember that Don Cherry's heart was in the right place when he was talking about wearing poppies. That from Stephen Fetter. Let me wrap with this. Wear that poppy, lest we forget. We can all agree on that. And as we wrap, I want to thank you for being a part of this special episode of the show. Thank you for taking time out of your Remembrance Day to hear such powerful stories as so beautifully told by Don Levers, Randall Purvis, and Laurie Hawn. We welcome your feedback to talk@ryanjespersen.com. You can always find ways to connect with the show on our website, ryanjespersen.com. We'll be back at it tomorrow, an exclusive with the federal finance minister. Then Brian Lilly will break it down. We hope to see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Member Emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.